Hey everyone, and welcome back to another roundup. Wow, Cooking Mama sure has exploded, hasn't it? I can't believe that I'm saying that, but it's a really funny story. It's one that I think you'll enjoy. Lost Oasis has also had a turnaround, thankfully. There's also Sony news, Microsoft news, and there's Blizz not being able to handle the D from Rascal. There's that, plus much more. There are so many industry comings and goings that we've got a lot to talk about today, so I hope you enjoy today's video. Now, this is all brought to you by our patrons who get the daily briefing and the weekly recap, a one-stop shop for clear, concise game industry news that will keep you 100% up to date with all you need to know. Then, of course, our fantasy loot tier. Yep, physical loot in your postbox. You will get this gorgeous troll forest, you'll get this badass raptor, a snake weapon sticker, the Snord, plus the priest pin pre-order, and also these two gorgeous landscapes. All of it is straight from our game team to your postbox. It seriously helps us in these times of have-to-ad revenue, and it really does make this all possible, and these videos are at a loss. So thank you, and with that, let's get into the news. You know, there's a lot of controversial stuff in gaming, Bethesda, Blizzard, all that, but I never really thought that Cooking Mama would join them. And look, I don't even care about the IP. I expect many of you don't that much either, but this is a funny situation that really exploded. Depending on where you look, Cooking Mama Cookstar is either out now, coming soon, or missing altogether. And not only can retailers not agree in this, some aren't even sure what platform the game is on. It's on Switch, mostly, but there's also listings for a PS4 version. That was never confirmed. The game released on the US eShop last week, but it was then rapidly pulled from the store, and then some physical copies found their way to Australia. What? Basically, people didn't even know for a long time who even made the damn game, and they were confused about who even published it. After some digging, it's been confirmed that First Playable Productions developed the game. Now, we found this out when they commented on the crypto rumor. Yes, there's a crypto rumor. Of course, cryptocurrency is made into this story. Now, that's where it all gets a bit weirder. So, originating from 4chan and then corroborated by a Discord user and then sort of spread across the internet, there was a rumor that the game was using the Switch's leftover processing power to mine crypto. Now, this notion is tied to an old press release that details that Cookstar, yes, Cooking Mama pushing tech forward, would be the first game to integrate blockchain technology on major consoles. Now, this technology was intended to add new innovative gameplay that investors can have equity in and take the user experience to a whole new level. What a load of BS. When asked about this, First Playable replied that it was hypothetical, like most releases about blockchain. They confirmed that as the developers, they actually had never been approached regarding any of this blockchain stuff, and that they wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to implementing it, which does make that all pretty strange. Reverse engineering work seemingly has confirmed that there is no such crypto mining going on with the game, the blockchain tech's not being used. Claims of the game always being online and requiring active user accounts have also been debunked, and the battery drain and the overheating, well, it seems like that's just down to the game being an unoptimized mess. Interestingly, some of the music in the game was just ripped from YouTube. Which is wild, and that's even according to file names found by the person who was reverse engineering it. That does, of course, imply more than a little about the nature of the dev process for this game. And on that topic, a dev did get in touch with Screen Rant to set the record straight. So, apparently, the publisher, Planet Entertainment, apparently threw all that blockchain talk into their pitches to try to butter up investors. Now, the dev backs up that the overheating stuff is just a result of the game actually being a first time for many of the devs involved. Apparently, though, Nintendo and Sony did their usual reviews and gave the game a green light, which, I mean, it did appear in the eShop, so it mustn't have been that bad. I think if this was literally a crypto scam, Nintendo probably would have noticed in their review process. Now, the real reason that this game was pulled, apparently, is a legal battle, because yes, of course, this story gets more juicy. Planet Entertainment released this game against the wishes of the IP holder, Office Create, the original Cooking Mama devs, who are unhappy with the game's quality, and Planet Entertainment, in light of that, just ignored them and tried to release it anyway. What's really crazy is the relationship got so bad that when Office Create staff came over to oversee development of their beloved franchise, they were told that if they weren't constructive, they should leave. which is a bit insane. Now, after the premature release, Office Create got Nintendo to pull the game and to stop cartridge production of it. Now, this is, of course, the dev side of the story. Even in their statement to Screen Rant, they suggest that the dev team did try their best here and that it would have been fine if the publisher hadn't interfered, so that's a bit weird. We've not heard anything from the other involved parties, though, but this sounds like a sort of typical, if somewhat rare, story of just communication between the dev, publisher, and IP owner being an utter mess. It's hard to know what sort of contracts were signed here, but it seems like every party is at fault to some degree. First Playable seemed to be managed pretty darn poorly, with the devs saying that, well, they said this: "We were told the game was coming out in March. That's all anyone knew. The boss at One Planet, Toby, keeps that kind of thing to herself, mostly stating that she doesn't want to stress us with the details." That obviously is no way to run a studio, and it sounds like they just fired a bunch of fresh hires onto this and the game suffered as a result. Then Planet Entertainment's catalog, it's just shovelware. It's just a load of crap. So it just looks like them and Office Create were then keeping each other at arm's length. And the devs, I mean, them needing to rip assets from YouTube instead of getting them from the IP owner, that's just insane. This is a complete mess of a story. Now, I will say the people claiming this is a crypto scam, I think that is just a bit of imagination running wild. It does seem that just the project was an utter mess. And, like, look, if you want to mine most crypto now, at this stage with the difficulty levels, you're using an ASIC. You're not using a Tegra X1. I mean, it's hard to overstate how underpowered and outdated the Switch's hardware is. Nintendo do an utter miracle with what they can pull off in their first parties, that is for sure, but a viable crypto mining platform, it is not. What a mess, and let's move on. We've got some actual good news. Last Oasis appears to have recovered from its rocky early access launch. The devs basically took servers offline for a week to solve the multitude of underlying issues with the game, but since then, Donkey Crew have actually done a pretty darn good job of communicating with their fans through a consistent stream of Twitter updates and things like that. And basically, after spending a week working on the under the hood stuff, the devs launched a network stress test over the weekend to basically just test out their fixes and see how things went. Everything seemed to go well, handling traffic that was actually in excess of what crippled it at launch. The game's support Twitter page actually noted 30k character requests in a single minute, and 1k logins in a single minute. Now, this test was supposed to be temporary. We've got some actual good news. Last Oasis appears to have recovered from its rocky early access launch. The devs basically took servers offline for a week to solve the multitude of underlying issues with the game, but since then, Donkey Crew have actually done a pretty darn good job of communicating with their fans through a consistent stream of Twitter updates and things like that. And basically, after spending a week working on the under the hood stuff, the devs launched a network stress test over the weekend to basically just test out their fixes and see how things went. Everything seemed to go well, handling traffic that was actually in excess of what crippled it at launch. The game's support Twitter page actually noted 30k character requests in a single minute, and 1k logins in a single minute. Now, this test was supposed to be temporary, but the servers were actually just kept running overnight, and everything seems to be performing well for them. A full relaunch should be imminent of the game then, and Donkey Crew, I actually think, should be commended here. They didn't lead people, astray, right? They said, nope, this ain't working, we're taking it down for a week, we're going to fix it. Lo and behold, what happened? Well, they actually did that. And if you'd like a bit more color to this story and their history as a dev team and the Of Kings of Men stuff, and where, well, our path literally crosses with them, where they were about 200 meters in that direction, you can check out our video on that topic. Alright, next up, over to Amazon, who really have had not that much success in making games so far. I mean, between the cancelled Breakaway and the mixed reception of the Grand Tour video game, it's not exactly went swimmingly for them. The projects that they're currently working on, Crucible and New World, well, they are still barely on the horizon. However, they are still pretty ambitious games, and through all of this, I'm sure you know what AWS is. It is Amazon's, Amazon Web Services, their huge network of data centers that are responsible for a shocking amount of internet content delivery. Now, if you've got data centers all over the globe, you've got a great infrastructure, Well, there's only one thing to do these days, and that is to start a cloud streaming service. Yes, it's a long way off yet, and there are no solid details, but it's called Project Tempo. All I can say is hopefully it doesn't start like sniping exclusives. At the very least, I will say the new world is shaping up interestingly with the changes they've made, and I am excited for this Lord of the Rings MMO that I've supposedly heard of, or well, that we supposedly have heard of. Now, overall though, I'm worried. I don't want a monopoly, and I'm worried about Amazon's ability to just barge into the market with an insane amount of capital and resources. But that said, Amazon did try to do that to the mobile phone industry, and they obviously failed. The Fire Phone, well, it wasn't well received and they stopped, so I guess time will only tell what's going to go on there. Then next up, another delay story. When the world started to slow down and stay indoors, one of the expected factors in game delays was actually the ratings process, and it turns out that, yeah, that's happened. So, CERO, C-E-R-O, the Japanese rating board, they've announced a closure for a whole month. And basically that pushes their entire ratings queue back significantly, and because of that, I would actually expect somewhat hefty delays out of just about any Japanese game that has not already been rated, perhaps even in their Western releases. Now, this shouldn't affect primarily Western games unless they wanted to hold off for a simultaneous release, which I expect most blockbusters probably wouldn't do if it was just the Japanese market that would lose out there. Still, we'll see, right, in the coming weeks what games have actually got left out there. And next up on the topic of delays, we know that The Last of Us 2 has been delayed indefinitely because of physical logistical issues. But what about a digital-only launch? Well, according to Neil Druckmann, Sony are currently undecided. He said they're considering their options on that one and are working closely with Naughty Dog to release the game as soon as is possible. However, Sony just today are automatically refunding digital pre-orders for both The Last of Us and Iron Man VR. So it does look like this is definitely not the case, and that's not how they're going to be going. Then next, and somewhat tied to what people wanted from The Last of Us, well, despite many people actually already having received their physical editions, Square Enix have confirmed that they're not going to do the digital release of Final Fantasy VII Remake early. Basically, the reasoning here is that changing the date for the digital launch at this stage would lead to a bunch of logistical issues that could disrupt the launch itself for everyone, which I suppose does make enough sense. The launch date is firmly for April 10th, though preloading is now open in an attempt to alleviate the bandwidth stress. That does make you think that they could maybe just flip a switch. Overall, I mean, I do understand what they're doing. It's the kind of thing where they have given a bit of a blessing to people breaking street date for obvious logistical reasons, but that's not going to be an even policy across the board, so it probably does just make sense to stick to the official release date. Then moving on, well, we've not laughed at the owl for quite a while, so here's a funny little one from over the weekend. Players Lastro and the now aptly named Rascal have each been fined $1,000 for breaching the league's rules of competition and code of conduct. Naughty, naughty boys indeed. Basically, right, they said some naughty, if slightly funny things in game chat, not realizing that actually, well, spectators could see game chat. Yeah, playing from home must have melted them a bit, because dropping, an end-of-game GG, that's all well and good, but, I mean, I can't really say the next one on YouTube, but it was, sort of big, and then, one of these, and then a bit of that. So, rather funny. And in fairness, I will say, look, if OWL wants to be a pro sport sort of television broadcast style thing, then yeah, saying stuff like that and it being visible in chat, that can't fly. It's also why it's a bit dull. The owl shills can scream about their apparent 5 million viewers in China, but I think from the other numbers that are more clear, we know what's up there, right? The owl is not benefiting from the stay-at-home view boost that other esports have. CSGO has dominated it thus far, Valorant will probably kill it, and I'd say Overwatch should just focus on the players first and being a fun game first. Blizzard have obviously struggled with that. Yeah, so that's what's up there. Overall, I don't really think that chat should have been viewable to the spectators. It's a bit weird that they chose to do it that way, but well, there you go. It's a sort of situation where it's fun to laugh at the OWL, but also, if you are competing in a competition, yeah, maybe don't type that. I mean, a bit of a common sense approach, well, is common sense. Then next up, with E3 cancelled and there being really no sign of any promised sort of full digital replacements thus yet, IGN have seemingly stepped in with their Summer of Gaming event in June. It's going to have publisher presentations alongside IGN-led content such as interviews and discussions, so the usual type of thing. So far, the publishers confirmed, or partners even, are Square Enix, Bandai Namco, Devolver Digital, Amazon, and Twitter, of all people. Honestly, it makes sense. It's probably going to be okay, and I mean, it's IGN, right? Their reviews are pretty memey sometimes, right? But it does seem like a sensible use of their pretty deep publisher ties, or at least what seem to be pretty deep publisher ties. The next up, and I guess similarly, Phil Spencer, All Digital Edition. Yep, with E3 being firmly in the bin, they are going to be doing their own sort of like digital events up until, I think, July 2021. It's a smart thing to do, and with Phil saying that they're going to have games to talk about every time they get on stage, I do expect to see quite a bit there. So, there you go. That is it for today's gaming news. If you'd like to help us out, get some cool loot, and also get access to the daily briefing, that's on Patreon. But other than that, there's other videos to check out. We'll have one up on this channel tomorrow as well. So thank you very much for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.